Let's be honest, parenting can be messy and hard, but also so rewarding. In this podcast, we'll share all the ups and downs of parenthood, as well as share some of our favorite tips and tricks for parenting using both our experiences and expertise from our professional lives as a speech and language pathologist and teacher, but also our everyday lives as moms, just trying to balance it all. We're so glad you could join us.
Welcome to this week's episode of And Then We Had Kids. And I'm Jenny.
And I'm Sheena.
We're excited to be talking about a topic that I know that we will be referencing quite a bit throughout multiple episodes. Because it's a topic that even though we know a lot about it, I feel like we can confidently say we do our best. It's one where you're never going to get it all the time. Dun, da, 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 co-regulation. Some nice verbiage in there for all of you guys if you haven't heard of that before. Co-regulation is really helping our little ones manage those emotions that they're experiencing every day, whether it's a little emotion or more often than not, those big emotions that we get to help manage.
That we get to, manage is the nice way to say it, Jenny.
Well, what would you say? Yeah.
I don't know. It's been a rough week to actually think about that. So,
yeah, but I think that's so fitting. I mean,
it
you
is
and I,
very
we talk
fitting.
a lot, almost daily, not just about, and then we had kids. And I would say most often it's probably not about our episodes or our podcast, but it's just about mom life and say, hey, this is happening. Oh my gosh, this is how I'm feeling. Please help.
Well, and oddly enough, we were supposed to record this last night.
Yeah.
And I texted Jenny, like 10 minutes before we were supposed to meet, that I was super dysregulated and the baby was super dysregulated. And I locked myself in a bathroom to cry for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So even though we can talk a little bit about what it is and how to manage it and how we can teach our kids, just know that we struggle with it too sometimes, and that's okay.
Yeah. So yeah, you just had an example yesterday where you're like, I'm in a bathroom. I'm like, been there, sister friend. Like, yes, I know exactly all about that. If we're not in a place to manage our own emotions, the idea of helping a baby or a toddler manage theirs is exponentially difficult.
Yeah, it was very overwhelming last night. So I'm in a better place today. I'm more regulated.
There you go. To talk about co-regulation. So yeah, I had the same but different experience, right? Like I last week, we're getting back to the swing of thing of school, and my 3-year-old is getting ready, and she, bless her sweet heart, wants to do everything independently, and it's often very nice to let her have those moments. But when you're trying to get out the door at a certain time, so you're not the last one in the car drop off line, I just don't have the luxury of letting her try and put her shirt on for like the 9th time and getting more frustrated, more frustrated, more frustrated. And so she's trying to put her shirt on by herself, can't do it. She makes this noise that probably to most people, they can just let it go over their head.
Yeah.
To me, it's like deep in my soul, drives me crazy. And so she's making that noise. I'm trying to get her ready, my baby ready to get out the door. She starts yelling at me, yelling at herself, yelling at the shirt, like the whole body flail. And then all of a sudden I'm just yelling at her to be like, what are you doing? Stop. Let me help you. Stop. And like the therapeutic person, or like my therapeutic soul, like left my body and was like above me, being like, not helpful, not helpful, not helping.
Or like the like Jiminy Cricket, characters sitting on your shoulder, like telling you like, hey, that wasn't really a therapeutic moment. Let's take a deep breath and try it again.
But I couldn't stop.
Yeah.
I like in that moment, I was like, my emotions were gone. I couldn't help it, even though I knew logically not helping the situation at all.
Yeah.
But it truly was like an out of body experience where I'm like, knowing that we were going to be talking about this at some point in the future, I'm like, this is my life. This is my life example. This is like, why can't I like kind of like get out of this lane and start over. And I couldn't.
Yeah.
And then to like match that, I got in the car. I had my husband help me. Thankfully, he was still home. And, I start the car and playing is Ozzy Osbourne's Crazy Train.
Oh my God. How perfect is that?
It was like, I'm like, all right, okay, it's
Yeah.
only 8:25, but yeah, this is my day. Cool. Like it was a lot. But so this idea of we being able to co-regulate. So the goal with co-regulation is that we are like the models of how to manage those emotions so that our kids can then learn. So when they experience this, they're like seeing how to navigate their world and not have these like huge upset reactions to small problems like not being able to put your shirt on.
Right. Like that's not the end of the world.
Yes. But what's key about co-regulation is that understanding how we as adults we self-regulate. So that means
Right.
like doing things for ourselves when our emotions need a little like check and balance.
Right.
Um
And I think something to think about is we all want our kids to develop self regulation strategies. But for that to happen, co regulation has to come first. Like that's the building block for self regulation. And we also need to remember that our toddlers really just aren't developmentally ready to self regulate on their own quite yet.
right.
Right. Like
Even if
we're
they
trying
get
to
it
get
like
them there.
yeah, and sometimes they'll get it in certain scenarios so we're like, "Oh, okay, you got it. You got it." But they're not going to have it consistently where we can expect them to if something happens in their world that they can then go, "Oh, this is a moment where I should take a deep breath and calm myself down."
Right.
Just not going to happen yet. Um, so it's our job as the parent, it's our job as the adult in that situation to kind of check our emotions so that we can then help them and ultimately like we feel good in that situation too.
Right.
So it's not like this cycle.
Yep. And a perfect example of co regulation, which we all innately do as parents, is when we bring home our newborns from the hospital and they're crying and we're rocking them and soothing them and singing them lullabies. Those are all examples of co regulation.
Hmm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's like we do that up until maybe like 2 or 3 and then
yeah. We
just
think like
reminding
all of a sudden they
everybody.
have like these
Yeah.
language skills. And so they should be able to do it on their own. And surprise, surprise, they can't.
Right, exactly. So then it just gets us tripped up. Um so again, like we talk about like the idea within itself like seems so simple. In a way
Yeah.
like if you stay calm, your kid will stay calm kind of thing. And it doesn't happen that way.
Like how many times does the toddler start to yell, just like in your example, and then you start to yell,
Yeah.
and then it just like snowballs into this.
Or me simply even going, sometimes I'll go, stop. And I'm like, what? Why should she have to stop feeling a certain emotion? Like
Right.
that one's not helpful. And sometimes I'll catch myself saying, use your words.
I do that all the time.
Yeah. Again, because she has, I mean, and your toddler does too. Like they have really great language skills. It's not always the case if language is an area of need, but our kids they do have really good language and they can understand and use language really well. So when we say use your words, I will then catch myself and be like, again, not super helpful.
Right.
If they had the language to use, they would
And-
use it.
Right.
That's so you could say use your words and we'll get to like strategies of how to do these things. But we'll take the example of like use your words and then what? Um so I'm like, I'm already losing my little train of thought of where I started with this, but the idea that, that this idea seems so simple, but it takes a lot of work on our end as parents, and it's a lot of work for our kids too.
Right.
So thinking about how our emotions are up and down every day. When you think about, I'm at home, but you're at work and all the emotions you deal with parents, with your coworkers, with administrators, what are ways that you self regulate?
So in the moment, I do a lot of breathing exercises. And I think it's been nice having the Apple Watch, right? Like have you ever noticed it like prompts you to breathe? And then there's like a or something setting on the newest version. Um, Also, just taking a walk, go
Yeah,
for a walk, get some
right.
oxygen to your brain, get some movement in your body. Um, those are some really big ones. How
Yeah,
about
I
you?
remember that in my neuroscience class in grad school. I mean, our professor, she kind of recognized when we would like be getting to a really, intense lecture or like an exam was coming up, and we as a class would go outside, just walk around the building. So I agree with you that like taking a break, and even like us adults, we probably don't even realize like how many times we're checking our phone or like putting on some music while we're doing something that's
Yep.
difficult. That's all self regulation, as long as you're then going back to whatever task you're needing to get done and not just procrastinating.
Right.
Um, but I too like take a lot of deep breaths, just try and like stay in the moment. Or on the flip side, if something's difficult, like I'll think about something I have to look forward to.
Yeah.
Be like, all right, just if I can get through this, then this awesome thing is going to happen next.
Sometimes it's like those little pep talks to yourself.
Mm-hmm. We have done this before. I can do it again.
Yeah.
Got it.
Self-affirmation.
Right. And this is a little different. So self-regulating is a little different than self-care,
Yeah.
which I feel like we talk, I feel like I get a lot of like, oh, you should make sure to take care of yourself and go get that massage and make sure to find time to exercise.
Go to the
But
spa, do some
yeah.
retail therapy.
I mean, I would love to do that all day,
Yeah.
every day, um, but the self-regulation is just about those moments when we're experiencing frustration, anxiety, worry, embarrassment,
Yeah.
anything and all those in between.
It's like being able to control and manage those emotions with your coping tools, whereas I think self-care is a little bit more about like having the capacity to use those tools.
Totally. Yes. Yeah.
Can we make a
So
billboard of that?
yeah, I mean, but it is. It's so helpful. I think like in those, like having you as someone to reach out to, or like being able to listen to this and say, okay, yeah, those are moments when, yeah, I am better at managing my emotions. I'm better at managing my emotions when I've like had a good night's sleep, when I've eaten well. And yes, when I've like exercised, like I do
Right.
ultimately feel good. And all those factors, like what's happening in my outside world that's then impacting the world with my kids.
Yeah.
So do I have more patience? Yes. Do I have that time, that like split time of not having such a reaction to then getting my kid's reaction back, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like all of those self-care, like those proactive strategies just allow you to be able to access your toolbox more easily than when you've missed the cup of coffee in the morning, or you didn't get enough sleep because the baby was up all night, or you got stuck in traffic on the way to work. Um, so
So yeah, so and when we remain calm, that's what our kids are referencing and mirroring. And like we said, it's a lot easier said than done. So it's going to be a topic that we're going to be talking about over and over. And sometimes we can predict when our kids are going to have these big reactions, and other times it's a lot harder. So like I said, my daughter makes this like terrible noise, and I've come
can
to
you like
realize,
describe this noise,
oh,
not
it's
just for
like
me, but for our listeners? Like, I'm
I
just
can
really
like
curious. I'm trying to
recreate.
like
It's
picture
like,
her right now making this noise, and I
oh,
just
you don't you oh my
have I
gosh.
heard this noise before
Y-
from her?
maybe not. I do think that, and probably with most kids, they save their worse for us. I mean,
Oh,
we
a
as parents are their
hundred
safe space,
percent.
right? And so I do believe out in public and like in school and when we're over at friend's house or your house, like she is a dream and she's lovely and polite and will kind of follow the other kids' lead. And at home, it's like a pterodactyl mixed with like a whale, like echolocation sound, like a high pitch and like a ear piercing screech all the
Okay.
way on the whole body flailing.
I'm like visualizing this much better now.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so you're very welcome. So it's awful. And I would be really good at knowing if she made the sound, that meant her wanting help. So I'm like, okay. And I would label like, hey, it looks like you're feeling such and such. Like I can help you. And now it's become, I don't want help. I'm just going to like make this sound over and over and over until she can fix things in her own way.
Ugh.
So all the
Which
while,
is
and
great for building the independence, but I think it can be so frustrating as the parent.
yes. And a lot of these moments, I can stay calm. And, there's a part of me, the speech pathologist part of me loves language. Sometimes I talk a lot. Um, so I'm like talking her through what she's experiencing, like what emotion she's feeling, helping her identify that, naming some body clues. Looks like your fists are really tight, your face is really scrunched up. And she's still in this heightened state of emotion. And she obviously is not listening to any word that I'm saying.
Well, and I think that goes to you can't really rationalize an irrational thinker, right? So, what we know about behavior is that as behavior starts to increase or escalate, rational thought goes the opposite direction. So, it decreases, it goes out the window,
Right.
right? So, there's a little bit of that brain science to it. And I love talking about the brain science part of this because this is what I present to school staff when I'm doing trainings, um, have presented at conferences on this stuff. So we've been very fortunate over our careers to work with some people who um, have done a lot of research and studies around the brain science and how it relates to behavior. So I'm going to give kind of the Cliff Notes version for our listeners. And if anyone really wants like an in-depth conversation about it, hit me up. But we talk about it a little bit as in like the upstairs brain, downstairs brain, right? Or you can call it upper brain, lower brain, however you want to phrase it. But that downstairs brain is like our body's just like automatic response to it, right? Like it's a very reactive phase. That's what really triggers our fight, flight, or freeze response. It's what kind of takes over like our bodily functions, right? Like I don't have to think about what my body is doing. My body just does
Yeah.
it. It's just
Right.
the natural response.
So, like an example, like I experienced this moment or this emotion of frustration. The automatic response is the whining body flail
Right.
scream.
A baby is hungry or it
Yeah.
pooped. Its
Hmm.
automatic response is to cry, right? Like
Right.
the baby doesn't have to tell itself to cry. The baby just knows to automatically do it. That's downstairs brain.
Hmm.
Upstairs brain is a little bit trickier in that it's like that's where like all of our reasoning and our planning skills, problem solving skills come from, critical thinking skills. It's what allows us to really think before we act. It's where we have empathy and self-awareness and we control we have control over our emotions and our bodies.
Yeah.
And that's a lot harder to access, right? Like it's not our body's automatic response. The one way I heard someone describe this to me, and it really just stuck in my head, and I'm saying stuck for a very good reason, is using a Tootsie Pop as an
Huh.
example,
Oh.
right? So like that downstairs brain is that gooey center, and we often get stuck there versus wanting to get to that upstairs brain, that outer, hard candy shell, right? So if I see a snake, I live in Illinois. I don't think we
Yeah,
have
same here.
poisonous snakes here. We don't really see many snakes to begin with.
Hmm.
But if I see a snake, my body goes automatically to that gooey center of the Tootsie Pop, right? I automatically freeze. I don't know what to do. I can't stop myself to think before I act and to think,
Right.
okay, it's a harmless snake. You're in
Yeah.
Illinois, right? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
um, So that's kind of like a quick Cliff Notes version of the brain science behind behavior, why it happens, why when you're trying to rationalize with, your child who's in full-blown meltdown mode,
Yeah. Right.
they're not
They're in their
listening to
lower
you.
brain. Yeah.
Yeah, they're in that
And you
lower
could
brain. They
be
can't process all of the words that we're saying.
and you could be offering or talking to them and offering them things that they want. Like why they're upset is like let's say like they're upset that they can't have an extra like cookie or something. And so now they've gone from 0 to 100 and you go, "Okay, you can have the cookie." And it's as if you said either nothing or you're never getting cookies for the rest of your life. Just
Right,
deal with it. It's like
right,
they can't hear you even when it's a positive. So in those moments when they've gone to that lower brain that you're talking about, they they can't access skills that they have and we know that they can do like their language skills. They don't have access to that. They don't have access to be able to think about, "Oh, I've been in this situation before," or, "Oh, my mom or dad is talking to me. I should listen and hear what they have to say."
right. So it's like in those moments, really our goal is to regulate. And for our kids, a lot of times that requires co-regulating, right? So
Yes.
regulating with them. And
Mhm.
then once they're calm, we can start to use those as those teaching moments.
Yes. And in these moments too, being able to remind ourselves, I guess I can't say this, it's not always 100% of the time, but the majority of the time, our kids are not doing this to piss us off.
Right.
Right? Like
No
they're
matter
not.
how many times it feels
Yeah.
like that. And I will still say it again, learning behavior specialist. I know these things, but I still don't always follow them. And I will think to myself, like, oh, they're just being so manipulative or
Yes.
really just trying to push my buttons. Like they're doing this on purpose.
Right. And maybe sometimes. No.
Maybe sometimes they
But
are,
in the moments
but
that we're referring to, we're talking about those times that they don't have these skills, so they need us to help them. So being able to remind yourself when it's happening. So when you're dealing with like a kid having a tantrum, when you're in those moments when your kid is just not listening to you, when you're in those moments where you're like, what the heck is going on? And you're realizing you're starting to get more frustrated, more annoyed, more upset, reminding yourself they're in their lower brain. They're not doing this to piss me off intentionally.
nope.
They need my help.
They're stuck in that gooey
They're
center of
stuck.
the Tootsie Pop.
Yes.
Like, how do we get them out?
So being able, I also think of the analogy when I was thinking about this is the when you're on a flight, you have to put on your
Yes.
airbag.
Yep. The
So you
mask.
the
Yeah.
mask, the air mask, airbag.
Airbag.
Yeah.
That's
Hello,
cars.
sleep deprivation. Put on your mask before you can help other people. So if you notice yourself in these moments starting to become like more upset, more annoyed, more frustrated, all those things, being able to get yourself calm and then you'll be able to help your kid get calmer too to then hopefully solve whatever problem is happening
Right.
or
Like
be able
last
to move
night.
on so you're not stuck. Yeah.
Yeah. Like last night, me locking myself in the bathroom and texting you that I'm having myself a good cry. And
Cry it
then I
out.
did my breathing exercises. And then
Yes.
I was able to go back and eventually calm the baby
There you go. You
after
did it.
Jenny told me he's probably teething.
Well, sometimes you just need to remember how old your kid is and maybe they're getting their
I
molars. Yeah.
know.
Uh,
Ugh.
and I know we talk about we've thrown out a bunch of analogies and um like things to think about in different ways. And here's another one for you. Is that when we think about emotions, you can think about it like an iceberg, right? And
Yep.
so where I worked previously, there was a skill, um, and I loved this skill, and it really helped me as a professional and now as a mom. So if you think about an iceberg and what you see of the iceberg is just that the top 10%, not much. What is significant to that iceberg is below the surface. It's like
Right.
90%. And our kids' emotions are the same way. What we most often see or what we most often react to is anger. So when we get that yelling, the screaming, throwing, that anger emotion, that's that 10%. That's what we see. But what really is underneath is frustration, embarrassment, worry, sad,
Yeah.
disappointed, all those other emotions that are hidden under that water level.
Yeah.
So those emotions that are hidden under the surface, sometimes we can catch that early before it hits those like that really big anger. Um and so like I said earlier, I've been able to, obviously we know our kids the best as their parents. So I have learned what sets my daughter off more so than anything else. And right now she's like a big sensory. I think I said that earlier or in an earlier episode that if things don't feel right, if there's a seam on a piece of clothing, if there's a tag, it's no go, not having it. So
Right.
I can like figure out if she's picked out a shirt that she wants to wear that day. I will preface and do like a little coaching of like, maybe you want to pick something else before, since we only have so much time before we have to get ready for school. Um, but there are other times where I don't. And so we've really built our toolbox up, I would say. And again, we are constantly refreshing that toolbox and going back. And like I said, taking deep breaths. And my daughter's also really into like birthdays now and
Yeah.
like whose birthday it is, who's coming up, who did we just have a birthday for. So when she is feeling frustrated, when she's feeling annoyed, when she's feeling upset, disappointed before that big anger. And sometimes, like I said, I don't always catch it. My first go-to strategy for co-regulating is to do those deep breaths.
Same.
That's my number one, I would say. And I will practice and tell her, like, it looks like you're feeling frustrated. Let's take 3 deep breaths. So that's the script I use.
And I like that you like identify and label that emotion because it's also
Mm-hmm.
teaching them then about emotions. And we don't want our kids to grow up thinking that any emotions are bad, right? It's just how do
Exactly.
we get back to our baseline and how do we regulate? Our
Yes.
go-to is similar. It's still a breathing technique. Um, but there's actually a Daniel Tiger episode.
Oh, yeah.
So we like quote the episode. It's when you're feeling mad and you wanna roar, take a deep breath and count to 4. So that's what we do.
Oh,
Because the toddler has a tendency to roar like a dinosaur when he's feeling upset.
yeah.
So we use that Daniel Tiger
That's
kind of quote.
I like that you also have that like sing-songy voice in there and like the song tied to it. So not only you're shifting your son's mind to like, let's take 3 deep breaths, he's now shifting his thoughts. I'm gonna make a smart guess. That now he's thinking about Daniel Tiger. So
Yep.
he's being able to then think about something else, come out of that lower brain a little bit, and then take those deep breaths to then do whatever he needs to do. So yeah, so I'll hold up like if my daughter's in an okay space to hear me, I'll be like, remember, it's so and so's birthday coming up. Let's blow out 3 candles, and I'll hold up 3 fingers, and for each one, I then put one down. Again, being able to have her shift her thoughts to thinking about birthday parties and fun things that we
Right.
have. Um, so again, my script that I say is it looks like you're feeling
Whatever the
disappointed.
emotion is.
It
Yeah.
looks like you're feeling upset. It looks like you're feeling mad. Let's take 3 deep breaths. And I would say it works sometimes, right? Not
Yeah.
all the time, but
Yeah.
that's my initial go-to.
Well,
What
and
are some of the oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I use that too when the toddler's feeling sad, right? So it looks like you're sad. I see that you're crying. Do you need a hug? And so the hug is his kind of go-to co-regulation strategy when he's feeling really sad or overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Um, Another one that we have started trying, and his preschool does it too, is to do the body scan or a body check. Right. So
Okay.
like noticing that he's making a fist with his hand. And so we kind of just point it out and then we talk about like letting it go. Right. So how is your head feeling? How are your shoulders feeling? How's your tummy feeling? And doing that body scan from head to toe.
Do you in that body scan have him tense his muscles up, or are you just asking him to like notice what's going on and then move on?
Sometimes, yeah, I've tried both, but with him,
Yeah.
and I think we're still in that learning phase. I will say I've also done it with students,
Mhm.
and it works both ways for students. So sometimes it's just like noticing how it feels in that part of your body, and then sometimes it helps to like clench up and then relax.
Mhm.
So that was definitely one that I used to use with my students.
Right. Yeah. I haven't tried that yet with my daughter too much. My sister, who is a fourth grade teacher, noticed my daughter getting frustrated the other day, and she said, "Why don't you squeeze some lemons in your hand?"
Oh,
So
that's cute.
yeah, it was cute, and but it also showed that my daughter had no idea what the heck my sister was talking about. Like,
Oh,
because she was already a little upset about I don't remember,
yeah.
but did it did remind me that when we are teaching our kids these strategies, it's important to do these things. Like if your child has never learned about taking a deep breath, they've never done a body scan, if they've never squeezed lemon, so if they're clenching their fist and then letting go, doing it when they're already like in an emotional state, it's not going to work.
It's not the teaching
It's
moment.
not the teaching moment. So
First regulate, then teach.
yes. So being able to practice deep breaths when your child is calm, you can do that in the bathroom in a mirror. They can just watch you. If you ever notice, in like Daniel Tiger, if they have done it in like an episode of a show that they watch.
You
So
can
being
take a
able to,
picture or a video.
yeah, yeah, so many ways to practice before either one of you is experiencing really big emotions.
And needing to access that tool in the moment.
Yes. Some other strategies that we have tried, I will use like a boo boo pad or like a little ice
Oh,
pack. And so
yep.
have my daughter hold that. And what that does, again, it shifts her brain to be able to kind of get out of or get unstuck a little bit so that
Yep.
we can then talk about what's going on, talk about what she's feeling, figure out if she can ask for help or if I can offer her help. So an ice pack or a boo boo pad or even just holding ice if that's more easily available is definitely an option of a co-regulation strategy.
One that I used to use with my niece is rainbow breathing. And so you kind of
Mm.
imagine a rainbow. And so you stick your arms out to the side and you take a breath in and you raise your arms as if it's going up the rainbow. And then you pause at the top. And then you breathe out as if your hands, as you're bringing your hands back down with that like rainbow arch.
Oh, I like that one.
Yeah.
I've never tried that one before.
I mean, there's other breathing techniques like square breathing and figure eight breathing that are I feel like pretty popular breathing techniques. But
Yeah,
just a few others out there.
right, right. I just had, oh, we have like a little space, kind of like in each room, I guess, where she has like a stuffed animal, a lovey, a pillow. And so I'll sometimes just tell her, "Hey, it looks like you need to go take a break. Why don't you go lie down on your pillow?"
Yeah.
And she's gotten better at that. And she'll like go over there, like kind of crying. And I'll check in on her and say, "Are you still feeling such and such? Or are you feeling a little bit calmer? Are you ready to listen to mommy?" So being able to have a space where she knows that she can go to
Yeah.
just have a hot minute to herself.
Yeah. Like I did in the bathroom.
Like you had your bathroom. I doubt your husband had to tell you, "Hey, why don't you go take a moment in the bathroom?" But if he did, you'd be like, "Yeah, I'm going."
Yeah. Um, Another one that I have used both with students and with my toddler and with my nieces is calm down jars. So it's just
Yeah.
like those, like, like those homemade DIY, like lava lamps, essentially. And if you put some glitter or confetti in there, um, you can have them shake it up, kind of get some of that frustration and energy out. And then you calm down by watching like the glitter and the confetti all settle. So maybe we'll put up some instructions on how to make your own at home on our social media page.
I love that idea. That would be really helpful. I do know, yeah, my daughter likes the ones, and they're like I don't know the formal name for them, but it's just like the stick, the same idea that you like turn upside down and it has like the glitter and the stars and the hearts in
Yeah.
there. So like being able to, if you can take a moment to sit with them, if they want somebody in their space, to sit with them and be like, oh, let's count all the stars. Let's see if we can count five. Um, yeah, and another one I'll do with my daughter is simply counting to 10.
Yep.
Um, she I'll either do it just my hands and no words, with my fingers, I mean, and so that's fine. And other times I'll be like, okay, I'm just gonna count to 10. And then once we do, we can check it back in. My daughter right now does not like visual timers. Um, she
Except
hasn't
when
for
she's
a
at our
while.
house and just likes to play with it.
Yeah. But I have like an app on my phone. Again, there's a handful of apps out there of like, so it shows the passing of time. And when the time is done, so let's say I put on like 10 seconds, it reveals a picture.
Yep, I
So
have
it's
that
something
one
to look
too.
at. But that only triggers her more. There's something about timers that she is not about right now. Although I found them really helpful when I worked
Yeah.
at the school and at the other facility. So it is an option if your child, again, we're giving all these options because sometimes things work and sometimes they don't. And when
Or sometimes they
strategies,
work once and then they don't work the
yes,
next time.
exactly. So being able to take 3 deep breaths, not happening, you can then take a break in a comfy corner. If that's not happening, you can look at a glitter jar. You can use a time timer. So all these are tools that you have as like your arsenal so that you know it's like it's not a one and done.
Right.
So that is also the key with co-regulation is that our kids are not experiencing these emotions to make us more upset. And just because you've done it once doesn't mean it's always going to work 100% of the time.
Right.
So ultimately, we're the ones, steering the ship that we have to keep ourselves calm in order for our kids to then match what we do.
Right. It just allows us to be a good model for our kids.
Right.
So it
Yes.
also means us needing to take care of ourselves, which sometimes is easier said than done.
Mhm.
But
Mhm. Yeah.
at the same time, again, like just modeling for our kids what we want them to be able to do. And they're watching us all the time.
All the time. It's really lovely.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's nice to be loved, and other times you're like, "Oh my gosh, this is a lot." Oh, but
Leave me
other ways to
alone.
practice, I mean, we'll talk about also just building like an emotional vocabulary, but when you're reading stories, talk about what the characters are feeling. Talk about what, and maybe if they didn't even do it in the story, what could they do? Could they take deep breaths? Could they listen to a song to help them feel better? Could they ask for help from a parent, from a friend, from a sibling? Um, so you can also talk about if it's great if the characters do one of those things and you can identify it. Um, but reading stories or shows, let's not lie and say our kids are never on screen. So
All right.
being
Yeah.
able to talk
They
about what did Elsa do? What did Anna do? What did Kristoff do? I've watched a lot of Frozen too recently. Um, so again, practicing these when our kids are calm, when we're calm, will ultimately help be able to manage those emotions for ourselves and for our kids when they're experiencing a heightened state of emotion, when they're starting to get dysregulated.
yeah.
And a key part too is praising our kids when they do it.
Huge.
Huge. So even things where we think that they should do it, when things might come easily. You're like, oh my gosh, I love the way that you just took a break. I love the way that you asked for help. Thank you so much for using your words. I love the way that you did such and such.
Right.
Or when they've gotten through a difficult time, be like, good job using your deep breaths. Good job taking that rainbow breath. So, like I said earlier, one thing I say, and I have to catch myself, is say, use your words. So you could say that, but then follow it up with use your words. You can say, Mom, I need help.
Right.
You can say, Mom, I'm feeling frustrated. You can say, Mom, what do I do? So being able to give your child the script of what they can say, if you find yourself saying, use your words. What are those words? Give it to them. It's
Give
okay.
them the example.
Give them the words. Doesn't make for a win or a loss. It's gonna make for a better situation.
The win is them getting regulated,
Exactly.
because then we're probably getting regulated.
Mm-hmm. So, few things that we've really touched on in this episode is what co-regulation is, being able to support our kids manage and control their emotions, which takes a heck of a lot of time and a heck of a lot of energy, both from us and our kids.
Yep.
A lot of different strategies and like Sheena said, being able to check into our social media page for more specifics. If you want to reach out with any questions, we would love to like guide you in further directions of what strategies to try. And remember that the goal is to get your child out of that lower brain
Get
so
them
that
out of
they,
that gooey center.
yes, get them out of that gooey center so they can work through those emotions that they're experiencing every day.
Yep. Thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To catch all of the latest, you can follow us on Instagram @_and then we had kids. Thanks again, and like we say, life used to be carefree, and then we had kids.